100 targets in 10 minutes. Israel unleashed a deadly blitz on Lebanon, and hours after a ceasefire was announced in the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran.
More than 300 people have been killed in what observers say is one of the worst mass killings in Lebanon since the end of the country's civil war in 1990.
امبارح اللي صار انه الحي مليان، كل العالم تقريبا رجعت على بيوتها، وابن اختي ببيته مثل طعمية نصر الدين على الخامس قاموا اجوا طارت فينا البيوت.
ناطرين انه في عجقه كتير، في شهداء كتير، في شهداء قد ما بدك كلها اطفال ونسوان.
انا كنت وصلت اختي، طلعت اختي على البيت، نزلت رحت مشوار صغير ضرب، رجعت ما لقيت البناية ولا لقيت اختي ولا لقيت اهلي، كله لقيت خيي وابن خيي لقيناه بين مرضي.
ضاعوا العائلة كلها راحت. في شيء ما معقول، دمار هائل جدا. يعني الواحد اذا ما بيخاف بيصير. عندي خوف وعندي قلق، البلد وين رايح؟ شو بدنا نعمل بحياتنا؟ وين قاعدين؟ وين رايحين؟ ما حدا عارف شو بده يصير.
Flattened buildings, scorched vehicles and destroyed roads. Lebanese officials have reported strikes in densely populated areas, especially in the capital Beirut, calling the attacks a full-fledged war crime.
Now, the IDF denies targeting civilians, stating it struck Hezbollah's command and control centers and eliminated around 200 militants. Well, let's speak now to Behnam Ben Taleblu. He's a senior director of the Iran program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. All right. So thank you so much for joining us, Behnam. Yeah, Israel is to hold talks with Lebanon. Just how genuine do you think this diplomatic move is, and what can it realistically achieve?
Well, certainly those talks did not come out of a political vacuum. They came out of the past 48 hours of Hezbollah's patron, the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, pushing and pressuring Washington to include or connect the fronts, the Iranian homeland front and the Lebanese front, together as part of this ceasefire. This is the ceasefire, of course, that was agreed to about 2 days ago to get the conflict between the U.S., Iran, and Israel to be put on pause for 2 weeks so that ships could freely traverse the Strait of Hormuz and that the fighting would stop. Now, the Iranians are saying, and the Pakistanis are saying, who are the mediators, by the way, for these negotiations set to enshrine the ceasefire potentially starting this Saturday, that Lebanon was meant to be included. The Americans and the Israelis said no, but nonetheless, the U.S. does now seem to be pushing Israel towards some kind of reconciliation or diplomatic off-ramp vis-a-vis the government in Beirut. So we'll see what comes out of talks early next week that the State Department is hosting between the government in Beirut and Israel itself. But make no mistake, this is yet another reminder that the war with and against the Islamic Republic of Iran has many fronts: the territorial one, the maritime one, and of course the one in the Levant that you're seeing on your screen.
Okay, Behnam, Israel and Lebanon, we know, have been talking for years now. I mean, can you hold talks without a ceasefire and also the involvement of Hezbollah? I mean, the Lebanese army has essentially failed to disarm the group so far.
You know, you hit the nail on the head there, because central authority in Beirut, whether you look at this issue economically, socially, or perhaps even militarily when it comes to disarming, have really failed no matter who was at the helm in Beirut since 2006, since the last major Lebanon-Israel war, to begin to be able to disarm this group. And the permissive jurisdiction that the Islamic Republic had to arm Hezbollah and bolster and train and equip and finance it in the absence or in the vacuum of central authority in Lebanon being able to do that has led to this problem, which is precisely why Israel is the one who is unilaterally intervening and doing everything it can actually to enforce previously existing UN Security Council resolutions on Lebanon, like 1701, for example, that call for no arms transfers and that call for disarmament. The challenge is, how can Israel and the new central authority in Beirut get together to try to come up with a plan to deconflict and disarm Hezbollah, or at the very least push it back? And just as you noted with respect to the ceasefire on Iran, I would say it would be unwise for the Trump administration to link the fronts. The Islamic Republic is not in the position to be able to dictate the scale and the scope of these things. And therefore, again, I think it would be a strategic and political mistake for America to let Tehran dictate what the new terms will be, quite literally, in real time on social media.
Okay, so Behnam, from Washington's point of view, Mr. Trump did confirm that he had asked Netanyahu to be more low-key when it comes to Lebanon. I wonder, to what extent would this diplomatic track ease pressure on the U.S. team heading into talks in Islamabad?
Well, certainly, I think that statement, and even prior to the president saying this, Vice President Vance, who was traveling, also mentioned something to that effect about a potential different Israeli style in Lebanon. But style has a substance of its own. But who knows what the targeting of Israel will look like stylistically and substantively up until the conversation with Central Authority from Beirut in D.C. next week. So certainly, I think the president has put that out there. But I think also the president rightly understands that it wouldn't behoove him to connect these dots. And so ultimately, when you're looking at the conversations in Pakistan versus the conversations in D.C., the Trump administration would be wise, or would suit them to keep them as separate as possible. And the Islamic Republic, again, is looking to link them.
Behnam, I heard this on my way to work this morning. Lebanon is the sideshow. U.S.-Iran talks is the real show. So I'm wondering, where that leaves Lebanon. As long as Trump wants out of the war and the talks are successful, Lebanon, I guess in a manner of speaking, may be spared. But if those talks fail, is Benjamin Netanyahu just going to resume what he's been doing?
Well, the challenge is Hezbollah going to be resuming and returning fire as well? There is an easier way out of this, but this got me thinking, who were you speaking to this morning? Because certainly from a financial perspective, certainly from a global perspective, the forces that have the most impact on, as you see, oil prices, oil futures, and oil supply, Brent and West Texas Intermediate, those are the ones who have been quite giddy about the ceasefire about 48 hours ago. But today, some of these futures are up. So the question is, what does a ceasefire mean when in reality there is still all of this shooting going on? So even those who were economically optimistic about the prospects of a ceasefire now, just less than 2 days later, are slowly beginning to become pessimistic. And one doesn't need to take it from me. President Trump personally has every incentive to try to, amp up and puff up some of the morale for the markets here. But his tweet, even I think our statement on Truth Social just about an hour ago, saying that the Strait doesn't really feel open, that the Strait isn't really open in the way that it should be, maybe tipping his hand here about a potential restoration of force and a restoration of hostilities and a real, again, challenge to those markets that he was looking to cool. So even if one is being more economic and security-minded about this rather than humanitarian, not that that should be the perspective, but if that is what is driving interest in the region rather than the humanitarian issue, we're still not out of the woodwork at all.
Okay, and Behnam, just looking at the Iranian and the U.S. negotiating team, you of course mentioned J.D. Vance. What do the lineups tell you about how both sides are going into these talks?
Well, on the U.S. side, the lineup is historic. I just want to say this for the audience, because even though this is going to be indirect negotiations, or reportedly the Pakistanis will be playing some kind of mediator or moderator role, I mean, we'll see what happens on Saturday when these things commence. Perhaps there might be a photo op, perhaps there might be some side meeting in a hallway, who knows? But having the vice president, quite literally the second in line in the United States, present for these, that is the most high-level U.S.-Iran engagement, physical engagement, really since the 1979 revolution. We know the Iranian president and the U.S. president spoke on the phone in September 2013 on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. But aside from that, nothing this high level can really come to mind, particularly in a post-conflict situation. And as we look at the Iranian team, for example, there are rumors or reports or allegations that Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf, who is not sanctioned by the U.S. still, despite his background being on that negotiating team, may tip his hand about his ambitions for the future in Iran and potentially how Washington may see that. So personnel is policy on both sides of this negotiating team.
Understood, Behnam. I want to ask you about what the NATO chief Mark Rutte said as well not long ago, basically saying that the alliance is going to get involved in taking back control of the Strait of Hormuz. We also heard earlier from Mujtaba Khamenei saying that, look, there's going to be a new form of management in the Strait. So how do you see this playing out? I mean, is the world, is Europe going to take any kind of control or tolls for the Strait of Hormuz, or is this the time that they might actually really get involved?
Well, I mean, the point to note is that there should be no toll collecting to begin with. The challenge is the Islamic Republic is allegedly trying to create a tiered entry system. The Strait of Hormuz is not closed. Its entry is tiered and guarded by the Iranian military, in particular the Navy of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, which in many countries is a designated terrorist organization. They've put about reportedly 10 to 12 mines at part of the narrower portion of the strait, which makes tankers that do come and go have to traverse through Iranian territorial waters. So they've used the strategic geography to their advantage. Now the fear here is that they are indeed collecting tolls, and the best place the Europeans can support American efforts here is perhaps during a period of peacetime to do a minesweeping mission and get a commitment from the Iranians not to be striking any vessels that are there for minesweeping. This, I think, would be great. This would be on the wish list, but I think is not realistic and not in the offing. And so in the short run, the only opportunity I would see for some of these European countries to have a substantive role here rather than a stylistic one is in a post-conflict scenario where they could help create market confidence by leading or partaking in convoys to restore pre-Persian Gulf, pre-war levels of traffic to and from the Persian Gulf. If you're going to put them in harm's way, of course, you're going to have to think about defending them. And that's where I think the NATO Secretary General's comments are interesting, but you really want to see how it plays out. And that is going to be entirely linked to what comes out of Pakistan, given the indirect U.S.-Iran talks starting on Saturday.
Okay, Behnam, thank you very much for your time. Enjoyed talking to you. Behnam Ben Taleblu, Senior Director of the Iran Program at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies.